He followed his mother to church and found the love he never knew he needed. Before we dive into this captivating story, we invite you to leave a like and subscribe to the channel to support our work. We hope you enjoy it. In the soft morning light of Boston, as spring began to paint the streets with vivid shades of green and timidly blooming flowers in the window boxes of historic Beacon Hill homes, Thomas Gallagher let the hot water from the shower glide over his athletic body, while a misty cloud of steam spread across the glass walls of the sleek shower stall. Inside his modern penthouse, with a panoramic view of the Charles River, he sought to ease the tension that had built up after an exhausting week of negotiations and closed deals. At 36, Thomas was the embodiment of a successful businessman, owner of a growing tech empire that expanded quarter after quarter, demanding from him an almost total commitment to his relentless goals. The home automation system quickly filled the air with his morning financial reports as he wrapped a thick Egyptian cotton towel around his waist and moved into his usual sequence of daily activities. Everything in his life was perfectly orchestrated, clean, and efficient, but that perfection concealed an emptiness numbers could never fill. As he selected a light blue shirt and a light gray linen blazer, custom-tailored by a renowned Manhattan designer, his phone vibrated on the polished oak desk. The screen displayed the usual message from Neil Barrett, his personal assistant, reminding him about an important video conference with international investors interested in clean energy projects. Moments later, another notification popped up on his personal phone. It was from Barbara Gallagher, his mother. Thomas let out a brief sigh as he opened the message, already anticipating its content. The same invitation she had been repeating for weeks, asking him to accompany her to Sunday, Massachusetts. This particular date was especially symbolic, marking the approach of her 70th birthday, and Barbara insisted her son share the celebration with her. In the past, Thomas would have simply sent her an extravagant bouquet or planned a luxurious trip, believing such gestures could substitute for his presence. As the black sedan glided smoothly along the tree-lined avenues of downtown Boston, driven discreetly by his private chauffeur, Thomas absent-mindedly watched pedestrians crossing the streets. His gaze lingered for a moment on a young couple walking side by side, laughing at something only they shared. There was a lightness in that exchange that struck him uncomfortably, like a forgotten memory of what it felt like to live without carefully measured pressures. Throughout his life, relationships had always been parallel transactions. Elegant women, prearranged dates, agreements of mutual satisfaction, and emotional distance. He had never allowed himself to dream of anything deeper. But that fleeting moment, which should have slipped by unnoticed, left a stubborn trace behind. Arriving at the headquarters of Gallagher Innovations, a steel and glass skyscraper reflecting the city's clear sky, Thomas immediately plunged into the unforgiving rhythm of meetings and strategic decisions that filled his days. Million-dollar contracts, international mergers, quarterly reports. Each choice weighed heavily with the responsibility of keeping his company at the top of the global market. Yet by late afternoon, as the fast pace of the day began to settle, he noticed his mother's message still unanswered on his phone screen. It was as if that simple, persistent notification was daring him to step outside the path he had so carefully crafted for his life. Hovering his thumb over the reply button, he hesitated for long seconds. Finally, driven by an impulse that even surprised him, he typed a short confirmation, assuring her he would attend Sunday, Massachusetts. Thomas answered the message with a brief confirmation, promising he would be there. Then, he returned to focusing on the day's tasks, unaware that this simple gesture would set a different rhythm for the morning to come. Sunday morning dawned under a sky brushed with soft hues, white clouds lazily drifting above Boston. while a cool breeze swept along the sidewalks of Beacon Hill. Thomas Gallagher parked his car in front of his mother's home, a charming red brick house adorned with vibrant flowers in the windows, radiating timeless charm. The clock read exactly 9:15 when he turned off the engine and adjusted the crisp collar of his shirt before crossing the sidewalk to the front door. Before he could even touch the doorbell, Barbara Gallagher opened the door with a warm smile, her happiness lighting up her face in a way that pulled him straight back into childhood memories. Those carefree afternoons when he would return from school to find her waiting with a snack and kind words. The spontaneity of that simple embrace highlighted just how much distance, time, and commitments had placed between them. St. Anne's Church, just a few blocks away, still held its historic beauty, with a gray stone facade and colorful stained glass windows that shielded a space filled with reverence and a strong sense of community. As they walked toward the entrance, Thomas caught the comforting scent of lit candles mingling with the fresh flowers arranged near the altar, creating a scene that awakened long-forgotten memories. Barbara, her silver hair neatly pinned into an elegant bun, walked beside him with steady steps and a serene expression of contentment. Thomas glanced sideways at her, noticing with some surprise the vitality she still carried so naturally, despite the passing years. Being at her side filled him with a rare, unexpected sense of peace, as if, for a brief moment, he could disconnect from the fast-paced rhythm that usually ruled his life. Upon entering the main nave, they were greeted by warm smiles and affectionate nods from local community members. Barbara returned each greeting with the grace of someone deeply respected among the congregation, introducing Thomas with a pride that stirred something deep within him. She discreetly led him toward one of the front pews, insisting they sit close to the altar. Thomas, who would normally have avoided such visibility, accepted out of respect for his mother, allowing himself to take in the surroundings with a more attentive gaze than usual. The stained glass filtered the sunlight into a kaleidoscope of colors across the marble floor, creating soft patterns that seemed to dance with the shifting shadows inside the church. It was a quiet, almost hypnotic beauty that captured his attention in a way he hadn't anticipated. It was during that moment of contemplation that he saw her. Emily Carter, as he would later learn her name, stood among the members of the choir, standing out effortlessly without trying to be noticed. Her dark brown hair, loosely pinned, allowed a few strands to fall and frame her delicate face, where soft, expressive features conveyed a deep, quiet serenity. There was something about her presence, calm and unassuming, that naturally drew the eye, and Thomas felt captivated almost instantly, surprised by how someone so distant from his world of ambition and strategy could command his attention without a single word. As the Mass continued, Thomas moved through the rituals almost mechanically, his thoughts fixated on Emily. When she began to sing, her clear, resonant voice filled the space with a palpable emotion, reaching into the most sensitive parts of his soul. It wasn't just the melody or her technique that moved him. It was the raw authenticity in every note she sang. Each word seemed to tell a story, to carry a genuine emotion that enveloped him completely, as if she were singing not just for the congregation, but directly to him. He felt deeply affected, overwhelmed by a feeling he couldn't explain or control, something that transcended the logic that usually dictated his life. During communion, while Barbara made her way to the altar to receive the sacrament, Thomas stayed seated, discreetly following Emily's every move as she assisted the pastor. And then their eyes met. For a moment that stretched beyond time, a connection sparked between them. In her gaze, he noticed a quiet curiosity, maybe even a glimmer of recognition, as if both understood the weight of their brief encounter. Emily looked away with a gentle, composed movement, a soft blush coloring her cheeks, but not before leaving a lasting impression on Thomas, a certainty that this was no trivial moment. Thomas remained seated, quietly observing the flow of the service, while Emily's voice continued to echo through his thoughts. The next morning, golden rays of sunlight lazily filtered through the wide windows of Thomas Gallagher's apartment, casting a soft glow over the modern furniture that filled the space. But unlike most Monday mornings, where every minute of his schedule was meticulously timed between meetings and reports, this time he found himself distracted, as if the well-oiled machinery of his usual discipline had mysteriously jammed. The memory of Sunday's Mass remained vivid in his mind, not because of the rituals or the words of the sermon, but because of the clear image of Emily Carter, whose serene and captivating presence seemed to have lodged itself in his memory with unsettling clarity. Every detail, from the brightness of her eyes to the softness of her voice singing sacred melodies, kept replaying in his mind, interrupting his focus whenever he tried to shift back to his regular obligations. Thomas, so used to having absolute control over his emotions, couldn't quite understand the overwhelming effect that this woman, a complete stranger until now, was having on him. As he sipped his coffee, freshly brewed from his state-of-the-art machine, he gazed at the urban landscape stretching out before him through the glass walls, but he wasn't really seeing the elegant architecture of Boston or the busy movement of the people on the sidewalks below. His mind was elsewhere, replaying a much more vivid and striking scene. That brief moment when their eyes met at church, when the connection between him and Emily had been so strong that it pierced the invisible barriers of his carefully shielded life. In that fleeting instant, something inside him had stirred awake from a long slumber. Thomas couldn't quite name the feeling, whether it was an uncontrollable curiosity, a genuine desire to know her, or a restlessness sparked by the stark contrast between his calculated world and the authentic simplicity she embodied. Whatever it was, he knew he couldn't just move on as if nothing had happened. Determined not to let uncertainty drag on, Thomas made a decision that even surprised himself. Instead of heading straight to the office, as he would on any other Monday, he sent a quick message to Neil Barrett, instructing him to reschedule his morning meetings for the afternoon under the pretext of needing to handle personal matters. For a man who rarely allowed deviations from his flawless routine, this was a significant break, but he felt a strange and unshakable certainty that he was doing exactly what he needed to do. As his driver prepared the car, Thomas recalled a seemingly casual detail his mother had mentioned during their drive to church the day before. Barbara had noted that Emily Carter was a teacher at a community school in the Cambridge area, where she also volunteered in programs supporting underprivileged children. What had once been a passing comment now became the key that could bring him closer to the woman who had sparked such profound interest in him. Not long after, as the sedan crossed the elegant Harvard Bridge toward Cambridge, Thomas found himself lost in thought about how to approach this unexpected encounter. There was no room for business strategies or the polished charm he had mastered at gala dinners and corporate events. Emily belonged to a different world, one where authenticity prevailed over appearances and hidden agendas. He knew he would have to shed the armor he usually wore to protect his image and allow himself to act driven by something far more genuine. As the car neared the school, Thomas noticed the building's simplicity, brick walls adorned with children's drawings and colorful banners swaying gently in the breeze. There was an atmosphere of pure dedication there, of commitment to a greater purpose, and it touched him in an unexpected way, as if he could already feel the positive influence Emily brought to that environment. When they parked in front of the main gate, Thomas remained inside the car for a brief moment, taking in the scene. Children ran across the playground, laughing freely, while teachers watched over them with caring, attentive expressions. His eyes instinctively sought her out, drawn as if by an irresistible force. And then he saw her. Emily Carter walked alongside a group of children, helping them carry small flower pots that would soon be planted in the school garden. Her movements were delicate and attentive, showing genuine care for every detail. And her smile, especially when directed at the children, carried a purity Thomas rarely encountered in his usual circles. Seeing her in that context awakened an even deeper respect within him, amplifying the admiration he had already felt on Sunday. More than beauty or grace, Emily radiated a genuine charm that went far beyond appearances, making her even more captivating. Determined not to miss the opportunity, Thomas opened the car door and stepped out, crossing the small lawn toward the school's entrance. His impeccable suit and naturally commanding posture drew a few curious glances, but he kept his focus squarely on his goal. Approaching the fence that bordered the garden, he waited respectfully until Emily, sensing his presence, looked up. When their eyes finally met, something subtle lit up her face, a mix of surprise and discreet curiosity, as if she hadn't expected to see him again so soon, but wasn't upset by the coincidence either. In that instant, there was an unspoken recognition, a silent acceptance that the circumstances had brought them together for a reason, even if it wasn't yet clear. Maintaining his composure, Thomas offered a slight smile, letting his sincerity shine through that he rarely allowed in his professional world. Emily, with a simple gesture, said goodbye to the children and walked toward where Thomas was standing, while he felt his own heart quicken in a way that was unfamiliar to him. It wasn't fear or insecurity. It was the anticipation of a moment that, no matter how hard he tried to rationalize it, seemed guided by something much greater than conscious intention. As she approached, Thomas felt the confirmation of what he had already suspected. There was a palpable, almost tangible connection between them, something that couldn't be ignored or brushed aside. Without a single word, through just her calm gaze and serene expression, he understood that this meeting was only the beginning of something that would challenge everything he knew about control, predictability, and caution. He stayed near the school's fence for a while longer, quietly observing the way Emily dedicated herself to the children, in no rush to walk away. Thomas realized that no matter how carefully he planned his life, not even his most well-thought-out strategies could have anticipated the impact of that encounter in front of the school in Cambridge. When Emily stopped in front of him, bringing with her the same serenity that had captivated him at church, a subtle warmth coursed through his veins, as if her mere presence had the power to break down the defenses he had built over the years. His gaze remained locked on hers, absorbing every nuance of her calm expression, which somehow carried a depth that challenged him to see beyond appearances. What drove him wasn't a fleeting curiosity or a passing fancy. It was something much more visceral, a growing need to understand who this woman truly was, the woman who could shake his most deeply rooted convictions. A man who had commanded boardrooms full of attentive executives now found himself standing before Emily like a student facing his greatest lesson. As Emily watched him, there was a spontaneous gentleness about her, but also a discreet firmness that revealed the strength of her character. She didn't look at him with the eyes of someone easily impressed, nor did she seem the type to be swayed by hollow gestures or empty promises. She evaluated him quietly, not measuring his material wealth, but looking for what lay beyond his outward appearance. Maybe it was precisely that authenticity that left him so disarmed. In that brief instant, Thomas understood that he couldn't approach her with rehearsed words or the confidence that financial power usually gave him. He would have to be honest, to have the courage to show who he really was, stripped of all the shields he had used for so long to meet the world's expectations. In Emily's presence, there was an invitation to sincerity, a call he neither could nor wanted to ignore. With a slight tilt of his head, Thomas greeted Emily respectfully, offering a small, genuine smile meant to convey more than simple politeness. It was a gesture filled with intent, a sincere attempt to bridge the very different worlds they each came from. Emily, in turn, answered with a kind nod, her eyes holding his gaze steadily, their firmness contrasting with the softness of her features. There was no rush or anxiety in her demeanor, only a calm curiosity, as if she was willing to listen, but only if he had something truly worth saying. Thomas sensed that this moment called for more than good intentions. It called for action. Moved by that realization, he took a step forward and, with a firm but gentle voice, asked if he could accompany her while she returned to her school activities. After a brief pause for reflection, Emily agreed with a slight movement of her head, allowing him to walk with her across the sunlit courtyard. As they walked side by side, the world around them seemed to gradually fade away from Thomas's awareness. The children's laughter, the whispering of the leaves in the gentle breeze, even the vibrant colors of the school garden, all became mere background to the real scene unfolding before him. The growing closeness between him and Emily. Without forcing the conversation, Thomas allowed the moment to unfold naturally, listening intently to every word she shared about the school's projects, the positive impact small actions could have on the lives of the children, and the deep personal fulfillment she found in her vocation as an educator. Every sentence she spoke was filled with purpose, revealing a genuine commitment to her mission. Thomas found himself absorbed not just by her words, but by the passion with which she spoke, a passion that was not about personal ambition, but a true desire to make a difference. For a man used to environments where success was measured in numbers and signed contracts, this perspective was both unsettling and deeply inspiring. Thomas began to see Emily not just as a woman of unique charm, but as a living example of dedication and purpose. She embodied everything he realized he had lost sight of over years of chasing external achievements. There was a light in her that didn't depend on wealth or status, a quiet strength that radiated meaning in small, everyday acts. Seeing this, Thomas felt a growing desire to get closer to her, not out of selfish impulse, but from a sincere longing to understand the world she belonged to, a world that now seemed to be pulling at his own soul. Every step he took beside her deepened that connection, making everything else around them blur before the intensity of the moment they were sharing. When they reached the side of the school, where a group of children tended to a small community garden, Emily paused to supervise the young gardeners, her gaze both attentive and encouraging. Thomas stayed by her side, watching with growing respect and admiration how she interacted with the children. Her guidance was tender yet clear, providing them with a sense of security and trust. He could see that they didn't just listen to her. They trusted her completely, seeing in her a steady guide through the simple yet crucial challenges of childhood. In that moment, something deep inside Thomas crystallized. It wasn't just attraction or simple admiration. It was the realization that, by Emily's side, there was a path of authenticity that could teach him more about life than all the contracts and achievements he had accumulated over the years. Thomas left the school that afternoon with the image of Emily tending to the garden imprinted in his mind, already certain he would return soon. As the afternoon wore on, the sunlight softened over Cambridge, casting long shadows that danced across the school lawn. Thomas knew he would soon have to return to his professional obligations, but he also understood that something inside him had changed irreversibly. Before leaving, he gathered the courage to express his sincere wish to see Emily again. With carefully measured, honest words, he shared his admiration for the work she was doing there and respectfully asked if he could visit again, maybe to learn more about the project she was so passionate about. Emily, keeping her calm and steady gaze, offered a slight smile before answering that the school's doors were always open to anyone who wished to contribute in a genuine way. That simple reply, full of meaning, filled Thomas with a rare, genuine hope. As he walked away, carrying Emily's image firmly in his memory, he felt more alive than he had in years, certain that this encounter was only the beginning. Throughout the evening that followed, in the spacious apartment Thomas Gallagher called home, the usual distractions of the corporate world seemed to lose their grip. Reports that demanded his review sat untouched on the ebony desk, while important notifications piled up unanswered on his phone screen. No matter how much he tried to force himself back into the usual control of his routine, his mind stubbornly clung to the image of Emily Carter. The memory of the shy smile she had given him, the way she threw herself so passionately into the smallest details of her work at the school, and the effortless way she brought lightness to any space she entered filled his thoughts in a way no multi-million-dollar contract ever had. There was something about her that couldn't be explained by formulas for success or market forecasts. It felt like a vital need, an emotional anchor that now kept him tied to a deeper, more human desire. The next morning arrived faster than Thomas would have liked, bringing the familiar clear skies over Boston, but also stirring a different feeling within him. He rose early, as he always did, but instead of heading straight into his usual routine of exercise and reviewing commitments, he found himself lingering by the window, his eyes fixed on the distant horizon stretching beyond the Charles River. In his mind, he mapped out plans that went far beyond business strategies. He imagined paths that could bring him closer to Emily in an authentic way, without overstepping the delicate line between genuine interest and unwelcome insistence. With the same precision he used to navigate international negotiations, he planned a visit to the school, not as a businessman seeking publicity, but as a man genuinely moved by the purpose of contributing to something greater than himself. A few hours later, when Thomas arrived once again at the Cambridge school, he noticed the atmosphere seemed even more vibrant than the day before. The colors of the flowers in the garden, the contagious laughter of the children, and the soft sunlight filtering through the trees created an almost magical scene, capable of softening even the hardest spirits. Emily, true to her dedicated nature, was already immersed in her activities, organizing a small community fair with the students to raise funds for school improvements. It was clear she didn't just coordinate the event. She drew everyone in with her contagious enthusiasm, making each participant feel like an essential part of that collective effort. Thomas approached respectfully, keeping a distance that allowed him to observe without disrupting the natural flow of the activities, but close enough not to miss the chance to witness her fully in action. When Emily noticed him, her eyes lit up with a soft surprise, accompanied by a discreet smile warmer than any words could express. It wasn't a polite or forced smile. It was a genuine expression of recognition, as if she silently approved of his decision to return. Without the need for formalities, she invited him to join the preparations, giving him a few quick instructions on how he could help. Thomas accepted immediately, throwing himself into the task of setting up one of the booths that would host the fair's activities. Amid hammers, wooden boards, and colorful decorations, he found himself wrapped in an unexpectedly rewarding experience, far removed from the luxurious environments he was used to, but strangely more satisfying than any gala dinner he had ever attended. Working side by side with Emily, Thomas realized that even the simplest tasks could become real opportunities for connection when guided by a noble cause. The physical closeness, the teamwork, and the occasional exchange glances carried an emotional weight he could no longer ignore. Every gesture she made, no matter how small, revealed the depth of her commitment and the authenticity of her character. More than admiration, Thomas began to feel a growing reverence for Emily, a clear awareness that she embodied values he himself longed to cultivate but had long buried beneath the pressure of external expectations and material achievements. He realized that in that simple environment, surrounded by everyday people and sincere gestures, he had found a type of wealth that far exceeded any bank account. As the afternoon wore on and the preparations neared completion, Thomas and Emily found a brief moment of pause under the welcoming shade of an old tree by the playground. Sitting on a weathered wooden bench, they exchanged a few words that, though simple, carried the depth of two people beginning to build a solid bridge between their very different worlds. Emily spoke with enthusiasm about her dreams for the school and the children who studied there, sharing visions of a future that went far beyond mere financial survival for the project. She dreamed of creating real opportunities for transformation, of opening doors for those who otherwise would remain on society's margins. Thomas listened intently, more and more convinced that he didn't just want to be a spectator to all of this. He wanted to be an active participant in making those dreams come true. Before time pulled them back into the fair's remaining obligations, Thomas took the liberty of sharing an idea he had been nurturing throughout the day. With respect, he suggested a closer collaboration, offering his resources and experience to help drive the school's projects forward, but making it clear he sought no recognition or personal gain. He wanted to contribute because he genuinely believed in what Emily was doing, and because undeniably he had found in her and her mission something that finally filled the emptiness he had carried for so long. Emily, surprised by the sincerity of his offer, held his gaze for what felt like an eternity, as if searching the depths of his soul for confirmation of his intentions. Then, with a smile that blended gratitude and hope, she replied that she would accept the help as long as it came with the same spirit of honesty she saw in him at that moment. With that agreement sealed between them, Thomas felt a quiet flame light inside his chest, warming the forgotten parts of his heart. That evening, as the sun began to set over Cambridge, bathing the sky in golden and orange hues, he knew with absolute clarity that his life had started down a new path, one paved not with contracts and numbers, but with genuine human connections and shared purposes. The image of Emily, bathed in the soft glow of the sunset, would remain forever etched in his memory as the mark of a deeply transformative rebirth. The next day dawned with the gentle breeze typical of springtime in Boston, and even though Thomas Gallagher's commitments were piling up at their usual fast pace, there was a newfound sense of calm within him, as if, suddenly, the priorities in his life had begun to reorganize themselves naturally. It felt as if the contracts, mergers, and billion-dollar negotiations that had once dominated his every thought had been quietly pushed aside, making room for something he had never truly allowed himself to consider: the possibility of a genuine connection, one that transcended appearances and social conventions. As he adjusted his tie in front of the mirror, he caught himself recalling every detail of his meeting at the school, from the ease with which Emily had included him in the day-to-day tasks to the pure honesty of her smile when she accepted his proposal to collaborate. It was striking how effortlessly she filled his mind with long-forgotten thoughts, rekindling an enthusiasm he hadn't felt in years. During the drive to his office, seated in the back of the car expertly navigated by his driver, Thomas mentally reviewed the first steps he should take to support the school's projects in a meaningful way. He knew that simply providing financial resources wouldn't be enough. That part would be easy for him. What he truly desired was to genuinely immerse himself in the purpose that fueled Emily, to understand in depth her needs, her daily challenges, and the dreams she nurtured quietly, perhaps hoping that someday someone truly committed would extend a hand to help her realize them. This understanding sparked a rejuvenating motivation within him, something even his greatest corporate victories had failed to ignite. For the first time in a long while, Thomas felt he was about to engage in something that truly mattered, not for his reputation or for expanding his business empire, but for the growth of his own soul. At the glass-walled headquarters of Gallagher Innovations, the staff, accustomed to Thomas's unquestionable efficiency, noticed a subtle difference in him that morning. There was a lightness about him, an unusual sparkle in his eyes that contrasted with the habitual sternness he brought to high-level meetings. Even while discussing figures and strategies with international executives, part of his mind remained anchored in the project he was beginning to build alongside Emily. Between video conferences, he discreetly researched successful educational initiatives in neighborhoods similar to Cambridge, jotting down ideas that might enrich the proposal he intended to present. With growing excitement, he realized that this new venture was awakening a genuine sense of purpose in him, as if every detail he prepared for the school was also helping fill hidden gaps within his own life. Later that evening, after his workday ended, Thomas decided not to postpone the visit to the school any longer. He didn't want his plans to remain trapped on paper. He needed to take a real step forward. He informed his driver of the decision, and less than an hour later, he found himself once again at the entrance of the simple yet vibrant building where Emily spent her days shaping promising futures. When she saw him approaching, her expression brightened with the same natural warmth that had captivated him from the first moment. There was no trace of surprise or forced formality, only the genuine transparency of someone who was truly pleased to see him. Emily briefly paused her guidance to a group of children and walked over to him, bringing with her the calm energy of someone fully present in every moment. Thomas then shared the ideas he had been nurturing since their last meeting, presenting proposals to improve the school's infrastructure, launch extracurricular development programs, and even build partnerships with local universities to offer students the chance to dream bigger. As he spoke, his eyes kept seeking hers, as if needing Emily's validation, not only as an educator, but also as the woman who had, in such a short time, become the inspiration for his transformation. Emily listened carefully, absorbing each suggestion with the wisdom of someone who knows that good intentions must be followed by genuine action to truly take shape. Her comments were always thoughtful, firmly centered on what mattered most: the well-being and development of the children. Thomas admired this clarity of purpose even more, recognizing in her a strength that wasn't dazzled by money or grand promises. As their conversation unfolded, the world around them seemed to fade away until only the two of them remained, immersed in a dialogue that went far beyond administrative matters. They spoke about dreams, personal struggles, and the choices that had shaped their lives up to that point. Emily, with her natural and unpretentious honesty, shared some of the challenges she had faced early in her career, the sacrifices she had made to follow her calling, and her conviction that, even amid adversity, it was always worth fighting for a better future for the children. Touched by her sincerity, Thomas felt compelled to reveal pieces of his own story, sharing moments when the burden of his responsibilities had nearly clouded his vision of what truly mattered. Through that genuine exchange of confidences, they both realized that despite the apparent differences in their paths, they shared a common desire to make a tangible, meaningful difference. As night began to settle over Cambridge, blanketing the town under a starry sky. Thomas and Emily remained there, as if time itself had paused to give them that rare opportunity for a deep connection. The last golden rays of sunset had long faded from the horizon, yet a gentle light continued to shine within each of them, fueled by the certainty that they had found something rare and precious amid the complexities of the modern world. Before saying goodbye, Thomas dared to express a wish that had been growing inside him since their first meeting. He proposed that, once the school project was officially underway, they celebrate together with a dinner, not as businessman and educator, but as two people who, guided by shared ideals, had discovered in a chance encounter the opportunity to build something far more valuable than any material success. Emily, with a smile that blended surprise and quiet satisfaction, accepted the invitation, sealing with that simple gesture a promise of many more meetings to come. On the evening scheduled for their dinner, it seemed as if Boston had dressed itself for the occasion, offering a natural spectacle of warm colors painting the sky over the Charles River. Thomas Gallagher, who had maintained unwavering focus throughout a day filled with negotiations, realized that as the hour of his meeting with Emily Carter approached, a discreet nervousness settled in his chest, a long-forgotten feeling that surprised him with its unexpected intensity. He had led boardrooms, closed billion-dollar deals, and been a constant presence at the most exclusive events of the international business circuit, yet none of those experiences had stirred the kind of anticipation he felt now. It was different, deeply human. He had personally chosen a restaurant, a cozy spot on the riverbank, known for its welcoming atmosphere and dishes crafted from local ingredients. He wasn't aiming to impress her with extravagance, but rather to offer an authentic experience that reflected the respect and genuine interest he felt for her. Emily arrived right on time, wrapped in an elegant simplicity that made her even more captivating in Thomas's eyes. She wore a soft-toned dress that highlighted the natural delicacy of her presence, and her hair was neatly pinned up, with a few loose strands gently framing her face. When he saw her walking through the restaurant entrance, a sudden warmth rushed through Thomas, heating every fiber of his being. He stood up to greet her, offering a genuine smile that seemed to convey, without words, all the admiration he had nurtured for her since the moment he first saw her at St. Anne's Church. Emily, catching his gaze, returned the smile with a lightness that swept away any formality between them, as if that evening already carried a special meaning that made any social pretense unnecessary. They sat at a table thoughtfully placed near the large panoramic window, where they could admire the city lights dancing over the calm waters of the river. From the start, the conversation flowed with a surprising ease. They didn't need to rely on the usual small talk or the rigid structure of preset questions, as often happened at business or social events Thomas attended. They spoke about themselves, their pasts, the choices that had shaped their journeys to that moment. Emily shared details of her childhood in a small town in Pennsylvania, where the values of solidarity and community service had been instilled in her from an early age. She spoke of her decision to pursue a career in education, motivated not by a lack of more lucrative options, but by a deep vocation to transform lives through teaching. Her voice carried the certainty of someone who truly knew her purpose, and Thomas, absorbing every word, found himself increasingly drawn not only to her intelligence, but to the integrity that radiated from her soul. When it was his turn to speak, Thomas didn't hesitate to shed the layers of self-protection he usually wore when sharing his own story. He talked about a childhood marked by his father's absence, the early responsibilities he shouldered to keep the family business alive, and the countless late nights he had sacrificed personal dreams in pursuit of results he had long believed were the only valid measure of success. He confessed, with a raw honesty even he hadn't realized he possessed, that along the way, he had set aside important aspects of his personal life, trapped in a vicious cycle of external achievements that did little to fill the internal voids. Emily listened intently, never interrupting or judging. Her gaze conveyed a deep understanding, as if she recognized the rare courage it took to be vulnerable. The dinner continued wrapped in an atmosphere of growing closeness, filled with spontaneous laughter and sincere moments of reflection that brought their seemingly distant worlds ever closer together. With each story Emily shared, Thomas discovered new facets of her personality and glimpses of a path he himself might still be able to walk. It was as if, for the first time in many years, he could envision a future guided not just by reason, but by choices made with the heart. Emily, in turn, seemed to see beyond the facade of the business magnate, recognizing in the man before her a generous spirit, simply waiting for the right opportunity to bloom. There was a palpable connection between them, an invisible bridge that grew stronger with each shared confidence, with every smile exchanged under the soft glow of the candles that lit their table. As the dinner drew to a close, the atmosphere between them grew even more charged with a sweet, almost tangible tension, something both recognized but neither rushed. Wanting to prolong the magic of the evening, Thomas suggested a short walk along the river before saying goodnight. Emily accepted with a serene nod, and together they stepped into the cool Boston night, where the light breeze carried the scent of spring flowers and the city lights twinkled like earthbound stars. As they walked side by side, their conversation remained easy, interspersed with comfortable silences that needed no words to be understood. Thomas felt, with growing clarity, that he was living one of those rare and precious moments that would be remembered not for what was said, but for what was deeply felt. When they finally stopped in front of the river's reflecting pool, Thomas turned toward Emily, allowing the sincerity in his eyes to shine through. He didn't have to rehearse his next move or weigh its consequences. Every fiber of his being guided him toward a single gesture. Gently, he stepped closer and, in a natural movement, leaned in toward her. Emily, far from retreating, tilted her face up slightly, welcoming the moment with a shared understanding that needed no words. The kiss that followed wasn't rushed or exaggerated. It was deep, filled with the quiet emotion that had been building from the moment their eyes first met that Sunday morning. The kiss unfolded naturally, needing no words, as the river lights reflected the quiet shimmer of that unforgettable night. The morning after the dinner, Thomas Gallagher woke up earlier than usual, even without having set an alarm. The soft morning light streamed into the room through the large glass windows, illuminating the elegant lines of the furniture and the meticulously arranged objects on the dresser. For the first time in a long while, he didn't rush to start his workout routine or check the latest market updates. Instead, he sat on the edge of the bed for a few moments, his thoughts naturally turning to Emily Carter. He replayed every detail of the previous night, the calm sparkle in her eyes, the effortless grace with which they had walked together along the riverbank. There was no doubt in his mind. The connection between them was unlike anything he had ever experienced. It wasn't a passing whim or a fleeting distraction. It was something that made him want to uncover every layer of her soul, to understand the roots of her strength and the depth of the dreams she nurtured each day. Thomas, who had always prioritized efficiency and quick results, now felt an authentic desire to invest time in something that couldn't be rushed. The way Emily spoke about her community projects, the evident passion she brought to every small achievement at the school, made him see his own priorities from a new perspective. It was as if, by her side, he was beginning to understand the true meaning of the impact he could have on the world, not just through the millions he moved in business, but through the real transformation of lives. With that clarity in mind, he decided he wouldn't wait long to visit her again at the school. He didn't want the dinner to become a standalone event. He wanted to show Emily, through consistent actions, that his presence in her life came from a genuine interest, from a true desire to be part of the path she was walking. Later that afternoon, Thomas set aside his final meetings and headed to Cambridge, where the school was bustling with activity. Children ran back and forth, carrying colorful flags and boxes of toys to be sold at the upcoming community fair. The air was filled with excitement and energy, a contagious vitality that immediately swept over Thomas as he stepped through the entrance gate. Emily, deeply involved in organizing the event, looked even more radiant than usual, her attention seamlessly shifting between directing volunteers and ensuring every detail was in place. When she spotted him approaching, a soft smile appeared on her lips, as if she had been expecting his arrival, even without any prior arrangement. Without needing long explanations, she naturally included him in the activities, entrusting him with the supervision of one of the busiest stands of the fair. Throughout the next few hours, Thomas threw himself completely into the experience. He helped set up booths, organize donations, and even joined in on impromptu games to entertain the children, who quickly started calling him by name. He felt fully immersed in the vibrant, dynamic environment, a stark contrast to the rigid corporate events he was used to. Beside him, Emily continued leading each stage of the event with natural grace, demonstrating a leadership that inspired everyone around her. Thomas watched with admiration as she balanced the seriousness of the responsibilities with a spontaneous lightness that turned each challenge into an opportunity for growth and celebration. More than ever, he was certain he was standing next to a woman whose worth far exceeded any conventional measure, someone whose strength lay in her ability to transform the ordinary into something truly meaningful. As the event built toward its peak, with neighborhood residents and school supporters arriving, Thomas had the chance to see Emily interact with the community in a way that moved him deeply. She knew everyone by name, remembered each family's story, and treated everyone with the same dignity, without distinction. It was a living testament to the positive impact she had, not as a distant figure, but as an essential part of the social fabric that sustained that community. This realization only strengthened his desire to become even more engaged, not as a distant benefactor, but as an active participant in the transformation she was leading. Thomas understood that financial support was important, but he saw more clearly with each passing moment that his true contribution would come from personal involvement, from being present and genuinely connected to the people and projects Emily so deeply valued. When the fair finally came to a close, after a long day of hard work and tangible accomplishments, Emily and Thomas gathered to take stock of what they had achieved. The look of satisfaction on Emily's face as she saw the empty booths and the abundance of donations spoke volumes about the collective success of their efforts. Thomas felt a genuine pride for having been part of it, greater than any sense of accomplishment he had felt in recent business victories. They discussed the next steps, outlining together possibilities for expanding the school's programs and brainstorming new ways to engage the local community in lasting, meaningful ways. Emily, with her clear vision and grounded approach, ensured every idea stayed aligned with the real needs of the families they served. Thomas, for his part, offered strategic insights and contacts that could open new doors. As the last rays of sun dipped below the horizon and the residents slowly left the schoolyard, Thomas and Emily stood side by side, breathing deeply after a day of shared achievement. There was no need for additional words to acknowledge the significance of what they had experienced together. Both understood that something solid was being built, not just in the educational project that had brought them together, but in a relationship that was beginning to take shape with growing clarity. They exchanged a look that said more than any speech could, filled with mutual understanding and a deepening respect that supported each step they had taken side by side. Before leaving, Thomas promised to return soon to continue the plans they had set in motion, a promise made not out of obligation, but from a sincere desire to remain by Emily's side through each stage to come. Thomas Gallagher woke up that morning with a vivid sense that something inside him had gained new intensity over the past few days. It wasn't just the growing involvement with the school projects or the personal satisfaction that were provided. Without a doubt, it was the increasing impact that Emily Carter was having on his thoughts and emotions, something that was becoming inevitable and profound. As he adjusted his cufflinks in front of the mirror, the firm features of his face reflected not only the usual determination of a man accustomed to leading business empires, but also the presence of a more personal, intimate expectation, an ever-growing desire to spend more moments by her side. His thoughts sought her out almost reflexively, even during the most automatic tasks of the day, as if Emily had come to occupy a constant space within him, one that no professional obligation could fully satisfy. At the office, though surrounded by reports that required his meticulous analysis, Thomas still found room to mentally revisit the plans he and Emily had outlined together during the school fair. Among her proposals for the future, Emily had mentioned the idea of organizing a mentorship program for older students, connecting them with professionals from various fields to broaden their horizons and prepare them for challenges beyond their neighborhood. The idea, which might initially have sounded like a simple initiative, revealed admirable depth, rooted in a genuine belief that exposing young people to new possibilities could truly transform lives. Thomas, recognizing the real value of that proposal, began to sketch out how he could leverage his network to bring inspiring professionals to the school, people who could truly impact the students through their experiences and knowledge. As he planned the first steps to make that vision a reality, another, more personal idea began to take shape with growing clarity in his mind. He realized that the moments he and Emily had shared so far, meaningful as they were, had always revolved around school projects, naturally keeping their connection within a practical, collaborative sphere. However, what was blossoming between them went beyond noble causes. It was a human connection that deserved its own space to grow. He decided he would invite her for an outing away from the school setting, a time when they could get to know each other more spontaneously, free from the responsibilities and discussions that had initially brought them together. It was a way to deepen the bond forming between them, to allow them to discover each other on more personal levels. Later that afternoon, when he arrived once again at the school in Cambridge, Thomas found Emily reviewing documents with a few volunteer teachers. The natural exhaustion from a long day was visible in her features, but her eyes still carried the steady brightness of someone driven by a greater purpose. Thomas waited patiently for the right moment to approach, respecting the flow of activities, and when she finally turned toward him, he caught a welcoming, natural warmth in her expression, as if his presence had become a familiar and pleasant part of her environment. Without hesitation and keeping his tone light, he extended his invitation. He proposed a walk through Boston's public park, a place that, though located in the heart of the city, offered the quiet atmosphere he sought for the occasion. Emily, perhaps surprised by the suggestion, took a brief moment before accepting with a soft smile, one that hinted at a certain curiosity about what that more personal meeting might bring. The morning of the walk arrived under clear Boston skies, and the pleasant temperature set the perfect scene for an outdoor meeting. Thomas got there a few minutes early, something that for him symbolized more than punctuality. It represented how important that moment was to him. when he saw Emily approaching through the tree-lined paths of the park, carrying with her the familiar serenity and an effortless grace that contrasted with the rigid structure of his corporate world. He felt a deep sense of satisfaction just to have her there. They began walking without haste, taking in the blooming flowers along the paths and the relaxed presence of families enjoying the day. The conversation flowed naturally, as if they already shared an intimacy patiently built with every previous encounter. As they strolled, Thomas allowed himself to open up more than he had in any of their past meetings. He shared memories from his youth, reflections on choices he had made, and even confessions about regrets he had kept hidden until then. Emily, listening with genuine attentiveness, responded with thoughtful insights, not only embracing his words, but offering new perspectives he hadn't previously considered. Her worldview, grounded in simplicity and empathy, served as a refreshing contrast to the complexities that had always dominated Thomas's life. More than a casual conversation, their exchange during the walk became a profound sharing of ideas and feelings, building a foundation of mutual understanding that left both with the comforting sense that they were exactly where they were meant to be. At the end of the walk, they found a bench under the generous shade of a large, leafy tree, where they sat side by side, gazing at the still waters of an artificial lake mirroring the blue sky above. Emily spoke about her plans for the future, the hopes she nurtured for her students, and the projects she dreamed of realizing with the growing support they were gathering. Listening to her, Thomas felt not just admiration for her tireless dedication, but a deepening desire to stand beside her, not just as a partner in community initiatives, but as a partner in life. The clarity of that feeling was undeniable, pushing him to want to build a story alongside Emily that would transcend the limits of social projects. There, in that simple moment, something essential solidified between them. A mutual understanding that the bond they shared was strong enough to withstand the demands of daily life and transform into something even greater. The days that followed their walk in the park brought Thomas Gallagher a feeling he hadn't experienced in a long time, as if every appointment on his schedule now carried a subtle sense of lightness that had been absent before. Even meetings with demanding boards and strategic negotiations involving massive figures seemed less draining, perhaps because his mind, in scattered moments, involuntarily returned to images of Emily Carter, to the serene lines of her face and the quiet warmth of her smile during conversations that went far beyond social conventions. The memory of how she had listened to his confessions on the park bench, with a respect that was not charity but genuine attention, had a disarming effect on Thomas's natural defenses. He found himself less concerned with maintaining an impenetrable posture and more inclined to value simple gestures, honest conversations, and especially the growing closeness that strengthened with every new encounter between him and Emily. He decided he wouldn't allow that precious bond to be relegated to the sidelines of his busy life. With the same commitment he devoted to his major business projects, he began to think about how to deepen the relationship he was building with her. Although the initiatives for the school were advancing steadily, with structural improvements being implemented and new educational programs taking shape, Thomas knew there was something more to be cultivated, a space reserved just for the two of them, where they could explore the feelings that were naturally and inevitably blooming between them. It wasn't about rushing things, but about giving way to what had already become clear, the sincere desire to turn their growing affinity into a shared life story. On Saturday afternoon, he found the perfect opportunity. Emily was participating in a cultural event organized by an educators association, and Thomas, aware of the schedule, decided to attend, discreetly but intentionally. Upon arriving at the modest auditorium, decorated with murals painted by local children, he spotted her at the center of the room, engaged in lively discussions about inclusive teaching methods and strategies to strengthen community bonds through education. Her posture, firm yet open to dialogue, only confirmed what Thomas already knew. Emily was a transformative force wherever she went. When she noticed him, her initial surprise quickly gave way to a look of welcoming familiarity, and her eyes revealed the quiet satisfaction of seeing him there, interested not only in her work but in the very essence of who she was. After the lectures, as guests mingled informally around the room, Thomas and Emily found themselves near a table filled with educational materials. Naturally, she began introducing him to some of the most promising initiatives discussed during the event, and Thomas absorbed every explanation with genuine attention, seeing in her not just an exemplary educator, but the woman for whom his feelings were growing deeper each day. Their conversation soon drifted beyond professional topics, moving effortlessly into more personal territory. They spoke of books that had left marks on their journeys, places they dreamed of visiting, and childhood memories that had shaped their worldviews. In that exchange, they discovered more similarities than they had expected, an invisible thread weaving a stronger and stronger connection between them. As the late afternoon approached and attendees gradually left the venue, Thomas felt the moment called for something more. It was time to take a step forward, to offer Emily not just continued support for her community projects, but a clear, personal declaration of his feelings. With calm determination, he suggested they end the day with a visit to the Boston Public Library, a place Emily had mentioned during their walk in the park as holding a special place in her heart. Emily accepted the invitation with a particular sparkle in her eyes, and together they headed to the grand classical building, where the grandeur of the halls and the respectful quiet of the book-lined corridors created a perfect setting for deeper conversation. Among shelves filled with old volumes and hallways bathed in natural light, Thomas found the ideal backdrop to speak from the heart. As they strolled slowly between the rows of books, he shared with Emily the transformation he had been undergoing since the day their eyes first met at the church. He explained how, amidst the commitments that had always ruled his existence, her presence had awakened a new perspective, one that revealed there was room for something fuller and more authentic in his life. Emily listened attentively, absorbing every word not with surprise, but with a profound understanding, as if she had already sensed the direction their bond was taking. When Thomas finished, making it clear that he wished to build something solid with her, Emily remained silent for a brief moment, her eyes locked on his, before responding with a sincerity that echoed deep within him. She spoke of her natural caution, the importance of taking steps with conviction, but also the genuine joy she felt in discovering, by his side, a companion capable of sharing not just goals but fundamental values. Returning home that night, Thomas felt a rare and comforting sense of peace. He knew that between him and Emily there now existed a deeper understanding, a mutual acceptance of the path they could walk together. It wasn't about empty promises or impulsive declarations, but about the patient, careful construction of a relationship founded on respect, admiration, and true companionship. He went to bed with a clear mind, already envisioning the next steps they would take together, moved by a feeling that, more than growing day by day, was becoming the solid foundation for everything they hoped to build. The end. What did you think of this story? Let us know in the comments and tell us where you're watching from. See you next time.